everybody, and welcome to Ignore the Bird, Follow the River, a podcast where nerds and creatives talk about Willow. I am Zach, the illustrious and infamous Captain Zach. You can find or commission my art and role playing games at nerdcrafty.com. And I am joined by some friends here. I've got Weston.
Hey there, I'm Weston Lee Ball. I'm an actor, a goofball, rabble-rouser artist, and many other things. You can find me on the internet at Lava Submersible, TikTok, Instagram. That's me. And we're joined by Adam today. Adam, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey there, guys. I'm Adam. I am a brewer, a brewmeister. I'm also a big nerd, huge into sci-fi fantasy, all that stuff. And but yeah, I'm just a big fan of Willow and everything that it has to do with,
Oh yeah. There's a lot to talk about with Willow, but I think today we're gonna be like getting into the meat and potatoes of Willow the character. And I know when I'm watching anything, I keep a notepad or a computer by me because I can't turn off my forever DM brain. So I think that's what we'll be talking about. Certainly, what I'll be talking about as we just kind of nerded up about Willow here. So if that sounds interesting to you, welcome aboard. It's the characters that really turn a viewer into a fan, and it's the characters that players show up for in a D&D game. And Willow's got characters in spades. Weston, you were about to say something, please.
Yeah, thank you. I've been a fan of Willow since I can remember the movie came out in '88. I was born in '87, and I started watching that movie as early as I possibly could. It may be my favorite movie of all time, actually. I've watched Willow more than any other movie I've ever seen, as much as I love movies like The Godfather and classic films like that. I love me some fantasy, and I think it's interesting because in the late '80s, genre films were becoming big businesses, and the studios were still figuring out what was and what wasn't profitable. At the forefront of this was Lucas and Spielberg and a few others who had recently put up like pulp style genre fiction back into the public consciousness over the last decade. And while Lucas was working on Jedi, he met Warwick Davis, who was playing the role of Wicket, a significant Ewok. During the course of filming, George told a 13-year-old Warwick a story about a character he had been brewing for years by the name of Willow. Warwick would reprise the role of Wicket many times before finally starring as the titular swole pearl farmer, father, and husband whose children find a baby unlike themselves in a nearby river. Amid baseless threats and accusations of seed theft by his low-down, rotten landlord, Willow and his family take this Daikini baby in as one of their own, continuing a chain of events that would change the world. I just want to set the scene there, Willow is an incredible character, so I'm excited to talk about him, specifically Willow, tonight.
Yeah, we've been friends a long time, Weston, and you've definitely been talking about Willow a long time. And it was always like this movie that not a lot of people had seen and shared your enthusiasm for. It's like this tough sell.
Kind of a heartbreaker, it's like to think about it, because literally, what is there to not love about this movie?
Right.
You have George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Ron Howard, all teaming up, like literally the super team of the era coming together to make a movie. And, just an incredible sweeping arc. I honestly know this is controversial. So, this is just my opinion. I can genuinely watch A New Hope and Willow back to back and feel confident in saying that for me, I think Willow is a stronger movie. I think Willow as a character is a stronger antagonist or protagonist for the hero for the journey. I think that Mad Mardigan is a stronger, maybe better written character than New Hope Han Solo. A little less of just an archetype with a little bit more there. I would say that pretty much every character, side to side, I like more of what they're doing in Willow. It's always been kind of my big thing. Everyone else always liked Star Wars, or they liked this thing or that thing, but me, it was always Willow, and just high fantasy. Movies from that era have a certain magic to them.
Well, we all like an underdog, and Willow's not only an underdog in a character, but it just as a movie.
Totally.
In hindsight, since its release. Yeah, for me, I didn't watch it as a kid, so my connection to the movie is like watching it last year. So for me, I just have this less of the childhood nostalgia and just more of the cynic, more of the analytical, the film critic. So, and there's so many other things that have come out since then, namely Lord of the Rings. So there's definitely a different perspective for me on Willow, but I still absolutely love it. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it more. So, for me, if you're interested in playing Willow in a game, or you want to play a character that's inspired by him or like him, then you're grokking what I'm liking, and I'll be doing some character sheets and stuff. So we'll have some fun with that.
That's cool.
Adam, what's your connection to Willow?
Well, I was a little older than Weston when I first saw it. I do remember seeing it in the theater. Like my whole family went, mom, dad, both my sisters. I don't think my little brother went to see it then because I think he was like maybe 1 or 2, something like that. But then in like when it eventually came out on DVD, the whole family loved it. First of all, backtracking, and we were just so excited about it. I think we went back to see it like maybe a couple more times in the theater, like all of us, and then life goes on. It comes out on VHS cassette, and we immediately bought it, and like we watched that so much that so many times that I think maybe the tape even broke or something like that. It was yeah. And then the other cool thing was, I didn't realize it at the time, but I liked it so much I would watch it like after school, after like wrestling practice or dance practice or something like that. And my little brother started watching it, and we just like knew the movie by heart. And then consequently, like my mom would play it all the time, and she did childcare, and so she had all these kids that she babysat for, and all these kids were watching Willow for like like my age, younger, like all the way
I
and
love
up.
it.
So it was just like sort of a spreading the
love
word
that.
of Willow. That's basically my experience, and I haven't watched it in like God, I probably a good few years, and I'm glad that this came up because now I have the opportunity to refresh myself with it and have some fun with it and just do these deep dives with you guys.
Well, and they're
Yeah,
gonna do the show this year, so
Yeah,
we'll
and that too. That's amazing too. Yeah.
right. The
so
opportunity to rewatch it was definitely going to come up either way, and
Right.
this is I'm glad to be talking about it or talking about Willow with a bunch of people who have that. I mean, Adam, you have a very similar experience that I have. Like me
Yeah.
and like my mom. I just when I hear Mad Mardigan say, "I feel bad," I don't think about Mad Mardigan. I'm thinking about my mom because that literally
Right. Yeah.
throughout my childhood was just a phrase that she would say. Like she just got out of the shower and she's like, that was like her phrase or whatever. She has in a good mood or whatever. I was
Yep.
I might say that the next time I get out of the bathroom. Maybe not from a shower.
I love it.
Like things like that, like when my brother and my 2 sisters and I would be horsing around, and somebody takes something from anybody else, just steals it and runs away. And our catchphrase was, "Did you see what they did? They just stole our black root." Didn't matter what they took; it was the black root.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's such a quotable movie. I mean, there's so many great, like, one-lines,
Yeah.
Like, find the child!
Especially if you're a kid. Everything that the brownies say, if you're a kid,
Oh
you're
God.
like, yeah!
Oh, love the brownies.
Oh, man. This is more
like,
fun.
I didn't know it at the time, but like it's freaking Kevin Pollak is one of the brownies.
I know, yeah.
A very young Kevin Pollak, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's such a great thing about this movie, is it's like so many fresh faces that at that point no one really knew yet. I mean, people knew Val Kilmer. I mean, obviously
Right.
he had done a couple of big comedies, but not a lot aside from Willow before that. I mean, if he had done a few movies, but yeah, Willow was like a big departure from the type that he had been cast as previous to that.
Yeah.
And Warwick, I mean, what an opportunity! 17 years old,
Yeah.
to
Crazy.
play the title character, the lead of this film. That's like the entire thing hinges on, and all that responsibility, like almost like you can see it within how he plays Willow as a father, and with all of this responsibility. It's
Oh,
like,
he nails it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really powerful performance. Um, so yeah.
Even the baby is a top performer in this movie. It's crazy.
Oh God, yeah.
The
Yeah.
baby's reaction shots are some
Yeah.
of the best.
When I was rewatching it, Samantha was
1000%.
watching it with me, and she was like, "How did they get the baby to do those
Yeah, man.
great reactions?"
Like
Oh,
when Mad Mardigan first picks up the baby, the look is like this like adult kind of disgust. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, no way, are you kidding me? Well, today we'll try to focus some topics, I guess, a little bit. We might talk mostly about Willow, the character, and attempt a deep dive. And maybe next week or next time we all get together, we can talk about Mad Mardigan, who is equally fun to talk about, but not introduced until 27 minutes into the film. And Willow is, of course, the titular character.
True.
yeah. Well, let's lead off on the strong foot of the Nelwyn.
I like it.
Yeah, because I mean, I could talk for hours about every single one of these characters, but Willow is. I feel like the interesting thing about the character just generally is that element of being an everyman. I think that um, being a farmer, being a father, having this landlord that's kind of like always breathing down his neck, the way that his whole society is kind of structured, him trying to do all of these important life things, but also trying to reach it for his dreams and be, apprentice to the High Aldwin. It's exactly what we're doing. you know, Working these garbage jobs that we hate with these terrible people as the people who are the arbiters of our homes, deciding whether or not we get to live there. Very little recourse most of the time for us to do anything about it. Struggling to get by, trying to reach for our dreams, do what we love. You know, we're all in a very similar position to Willow, and it's. I feel like he gets lost in the narrative because everyone else, everything in this movie is so cool. It's almost it's required to just sit there and focus on each individual character to kind of like analyze them, their decisions, why they're there. All of the choices that led them to the end of the conclusion. The plot.
Yeah, you definitely kind of forget about him until the very end when he does the sleight of hand trick, and you're like, oh yeah, he did this in the first like 15 minutes of the movie. A sleight of hand trick.
Yep. The old pig in a blanket.
Hmm He
Right.
definitely gets his time in that first 20 to 25 minutes of the movie, and I was gonna um, mention that he is the everyman. They do a really good job of that because they give him some plenty of foils and characters to bounce off with in his community. And his introduction, he pretty much does what an everyman would do when a baby arrives on your doorstep. You're like, no, find another doorstep.
100%. Yeah.
He's the first thing he says to his kids. He's like, "This is a daikini, baby. Push it down the river.
Yep.
Someone else is gonna get this. I can't have this." And that's the sad truth for most of us. I can certainly shamelessly admit is that my first instinct is not, yeah, I'm gonna take on this baby. I've
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
and
And
Andrew, this
I
is
love that they do that. Sorry, I was just gonna I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
finish my thought. I love that they do that, and they give him multiple outs, and multiple times he makes the decision that most of us would, but he's questioning, "Me gosh, did we do the right thing?" And
Yep.
I just love that they do that, and they spend the time with that in the first 25 minutes of 30. Well, by then you're 35 minutes in, but either way, like, that really cements he's an everyman, and they do a really good job of that, and they don't really pull any punches.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same theory that he has because we all realize, like, I mean, we can't even imagine that kind of socio-political pressure of suddenly this uh, unfamiliar baby kind of washing up, right there on your back door. It's a Willow's worried about the potential retribution he might face in his community, what they might do to him if
Yep.
he finds out that he's been harboring uh, this baby that from this essentially this warlike people. The Nelwans aren't um, super well acquainted with the Daikinis. They live separately, separated by the crossroads, and they're, I mean, for lack of a better term, segregated from each other.
Oh
And
yeah.
the way that the Nelwans have organized their whole community, I mean, it definitely Willow and Kaya and their whole family know that you know serious consequences could be in their future if people find out that they've been harboring this kid, especially after the death dogs show up in the town and tear everything to pieces.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and that's why they show up at the council, kind of heads held low and kind of unsure. But dude, like Kaya providing that moral center for Willow, because honestly, like you know, Willow's still unsure until Kaya is like, no, we're keeping it. It's like providing that moral center for their family, I mean, yeah, kind of like reminding Willow of what truly is good and right, and when you need to protect the innocent, the people who are most vulnerable in this world. And that's like she does it without thinking, without stating her points, doesn't with compassion, does it with empathy, without um, need for approval, because she knows it's the right thing to do. And that is what guides Willow a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time, I feel like Willow wants to bow out, and Laura Dana
Yeah.
is definitely someone that he cares about very, very quickly into the movie. I mean, he tells the High Alderman that he loves this child. Um, you know, when the High
But he
when
only
the High Alderman is grifting the town and pretending that he's reading the bones.
and he and he only tells him because he asks him.
Yep.
It's not something that he's necessarily willing to see in himself or wants to see in himself or has that initiative. But his wife and 2 kids, the dynamic that they have especially when he brings the baby back and before he leaves, but it's just magnifique. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it paints such a clear picture in very little words. It's really smart writing because it's showing us, not telling us what and why we're doing what we're doing. I think Willow deserves the kind of analysis that we give more, quote unquote serious movies. It's really smart the way that it kind of peppers information throughout the story without overwhelming you with exposition. Um, you know, uh, we learn who Willow is through the course of the film, through his actions. He's uh, once he encounters Mad Mardigan, for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes of the film until they're captured by Sorsha, Willow is doing nothing but riding him like he's one of his children, the bad one. Constantly uh, reinforcing the idea that Mad Mardigan is not the father in this situation, that Willow knows how to take care of children, and that Mad Mardigan is a clueless vagabond fucking his way up through life. And it's like only after that they're captured and Mad Mardigan starts showing that he has a heart and maybe feels some responsibility towards people other than himself. Like when I was rewatching it recently, it was like kind of like the first moment they really have. I mean, I think the build up to this moment is important, but overall is when Mad Mardigan and Willow are being trailed along by Sorsha's company, and Willow falls, and Mad Mardigan picks him up and puts him on his shoulders.
Mhm.
It's the first real service Mad Mardigan's done that's not just serving himself, that we can see.
Yeah, and it takes a while to get there. We haven't even spoken about the ignore the bird, follow the river.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Willow is before we even get to his dynamic with Mad Mardigan. His whole concern. He knew the answer to the question. What's the question that that he asked?
Which finger
Mm.
holds the power to rule the world?
I love that bit.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's like it's a trick question.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Of course.
It's
a
just
riddle.
another way that the High Alduin is kind of just like, less a powerful sorcerer and more a lovable goofball who knows magic. Like in the book, in the adaptation, or not adaptation, the
Novelization?
novelization. Thank you. Uh, it actually talks a little bit about like how the Nelwyns, or Willow specifically, has some inherent magic, mostly to do with like kind of like a natural magic, like a kind of like almost like
Like a sorcerer?
like a fey magic. This kind of
Okay.
like natural connection to um, the world, this connection to the material or the natural world. That it implies that the Nelwyn kind of in some almost like a force mitochondria. What is it? Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
He's got a midichlorian count.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Almost like that, but for Nelwyns and sorcery instead of the Force.
Sure.
Lucas.
George Lucas.
He writes what he knows.
Well, even in that theme about who holds the power to rule the world, it's your finger. I mean, that's a theme that you find in pretty much all of his movies.
And and that connection to magic is always represented by a dichotomy, a potential for good and a potential for bad or evil.
Yes.
And their connection to magic, I think, has a lot to do with the pure of heart.
Mm-hmm.
That Lord of the Rings kind of halfling
Right.
Hobbit magic of the simple life.
Yeah, humility.
Right.
That kind of
Mhm.
like almost like anime kind of power.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, I mean, Willow's no king, but that's the thing about being a king. The best kings are the ones that don't want the crown, and not just as kings, but any job that's worth doing. If it's something that's good and right, but you do it, whether you're begrudging about it or not, you did the right thing, and you should be judged by your actions.
It's when something's thrust upon you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a powerful message.
I think it's easy to imply that after Willow returns home, he becomes the High Aldwin's apprentice, and that natural kind of magic um, uh, is, I mean, and the not to mention the power he kind of acquires on his journey through training with Fin Raziel. Kind of like I think it's heavily implied that Willow is probably going to be the next High Aldwin of his village and all that stuff. And I
Do you think that they'll do that in the show?
I'm unsure. I know that the books, I think from what because I haven't read all of them, but thumbing through it for this, I know that Willow did eventually go back to, or obviously at the end of the movie he's back in his village, but um, I'm not sure that he ever is made High Aldwin in the books. But I don't think that they're going. I mean, obviously they're not going directly to the books as a reference because so much has changed.
Oh, it's Disney. They trample over Lucas property books.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think they're going in a different direction than where Claremont and Lucas were going. I think it's probably for the best.
Sure,
I
they have
can't
to.
I can't confirm or deny that yet. But it's a pretty exciting thing just to be re-entering that world, and Willow being the main returning character. It's pretty good odds that Willow has grown significantly in power since the last time we encountered him in a story. Whether or not they made him
yeah.
High Aldwin of his village, or Willow decided that in this version of events, he would rather go back out and adventure some more. Maybe tragedy befalls him. Who knows? Kind of what happens in the meantime. But we do know he's coming back. And I think it's safe to say that he will be a much more powerful character than he was when we last encountered him.
See,
Oh
I
yeah.
think they're because a lot of times when you do any sequel, especially in video games, you gotta reset the power level to make the stakes. To have sufficient stakes and have the characters be in danger. What if he goes back and he keeps his power secret? He just becomes a farmer. He's just trying to take care of his family after all, and maybe occasionally his kids will convince him to open a door with telekinesis or something, or do a game with them or something, and then this past is brought back forth and he has to find his old magic ways and go out adventuring again. This life that he put away, kind of like that
True.
angle.
I would love if he was like, I don't think he's going to be a main character. I think he's going to be like the Gandalf
Oh, Obi-Wan,
or
yeah,
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he's going to kind of come into the story and leave and come in and kind of just be
No way.
like, because the
Old
main
Willow.
cast it seems is a much younger group of people who are
Sure.
on their own quest. It may be that it seems as though, from what I can tell, and there's very little out there, but from what I can tell, it seems as though they are on their own quest and probably are going to encounter Willow at some point, who will probably join their party. and more than likely accompany them for a few episodes, but probably not the entirety of the story. I think maybe a Obi-Wan kind of third act tragedy or something like that might happen, but hard to say.
I am of a different mind.
Well, it's funny because we keep kind of bringing up little D&D terms, and I'm curious. I know that you were talking about Willow as a D&D character. What does that look like?
Oh, well, I think that if you're going to do a Willow character, then you definitely need to be thinking about role playing your theme and role playing your aesthetics. So there's the good stuff, there's the what makes a character, and then there's the aesthetic, the dressing, the material stuff. And if you're going to be playing a Willow character, aesthetically, it's pretty easy to do. I think you can. The What's great about the old movie is it doesn't necessarily follow a lot of the tropes of a lot of it's not all Western fantasy and myth and lore and materials and stuff like that. Especially there's a difference between the Daikini and the Nelwynds aesthetically. So if that's what you're interested in, there's definitely a lot to be had just in the first 20-25 minutes of the movie. Like just that whole community, it's got a unique look.
Right,
And
Von Kar's armor looks totally different than anyone else's armor when you encounter the Daikinis at the crossroads.
Right. Yeah, the Daikini stuff is all kind of your traditional, European look. And then I feel like the Brownies and the Nelwynds, they all went a different route, and they made some choices that you don't necessarily see anywhere else in a lot of fantasy media. So aesthetically, you can, if you're like drawing a character or something, you can watch the first 20-25 minutes and you're there. And thematically, playing Willow in your games, he's the reluctant hero, which means you're going to be talking to your DM about like a character arc, or at least getting your character into the adventure and not we're a mercenary group. Like Willow's not in a mercenary group. He's not in, he's not going out to taverns looking out for wizards and goblins with quests. So you just need to have, even if it's just 1 minute where you tell your DM, hey, I want to play the reluctant hero. I want this thing thrust onto me, thrust onto the character. It's really easy to either just put it in your backstory, but it's really fun if you can get your DM to give you something to work with on that. And really, a MacGuffin, like a baby showing up at the doorstep, the party arriving in your village. I mean, the classic D&D start is that the community is having a problem. The blacksmith's daughter is missing. So if you're going to write your Willow character, you can be the farmer and your daughter is missing, and the party is going to help you find her. Or you can really attach your character to the quest or the story a lot easier because your character doesn't have a personal quest already. They're not trying to be a captain of a pirate ship or something like that. You just want to play the adventure. And if you get your melodramatic hook with your GM, you're set, and you're going to have a lot of fun with your reluctant hero. Everyone else is going to be playing these freaking edgelord, death cleric, fucking boring sorry, pardon the language, boring ass characters that we've all seen before, and you're going to have so much fun playing this quirky little, and it doesn't even have to be aesthetically little. You can just take that theme and apply it to a character that looks entirely different. You can put it into your cyberpunk game. But if you get that theme of the reluctant hero, I feel like that's what Willow is a lot of. He's that everyman. If you can get like a couple moments where you get to leave the quest behind and you just kind of wink at your GM. Like, we all know you're going to be in the party and playing the adventure, but you can have your character say something like, okay, we're done. I'm done now. I'm going back home. And hopefully, if you've got a GM with a good NPC in the group, or you've got a good player in the group, they're going to respond to that and be like, and convince you to stay and have you have a good character moment the same way Willow does when he's talking to Migosh about whether they did the right thing. So, thematically, it just requires a little bit of time with your GM. And any GM I know is just going to be salivating when you do this.
Well, let me ask, if it was strictly from the movie Willow, like you're going out on that exact adventure, would Elora Danon's like whole awesome leather backpack be an encumbrance?
It depends on the player. I mean,
Well,
the
if you're
GM.
running Willow. Yeah. No, okay, that makes sense. It depends on the GM for sure.
Yeah.
No, honestly, it depends on the players. If you're, that's that session 0 where you discuss how much is the rule of cool and how much is only fun because you have difficulty, because you have stakes. Like, I've certainly played in games where the GM's like, okay, you're all level 1. We're playing with encumbrance. Life is cheap. And your gut reaction might be, oh man, I don't want to have to track every coin or track the weight of a rope. They combine size with weight in their calculations. A rope doesn't weigh this much, but it's cumbersome to carry, so they made it weigh more. And like, there's all this that goes with it. And then after a couple minutes, you figure it out, and it's an accomplishment, and it's fun. You did some problem solving. You're ditching your backpack at the start of combat. Everyone changed their characters to be a more optimal loadout. We ditched the all wizards idea. We finally got a barbarian, a rogue, and a wizard. It just depends on the player and the group. As a GM, if I'm having a big thing that the party has to carry, it's usually not fun for me. Games can move at a snail's pace, and it's your job as the GM to get to what everyone's going to have fun with. And me, as a GM, I have a lot more fun with character moments than calculating and looking up the weight of ropes.
Right. Or like they have the big stick that they put Elora Danon in the middle of at some points and just carry her like that sometimes. I don't know if that it helps party weight, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean,
it's something. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, until they get to the crossroads where they no longer use that, and it's unclear. But Willow does eventually get the backpack back.
Right. After a hawk and the brownies steal it.
Yeah. Trades hands a few times, but it comes back to it.
I wonder if an African swallow would be able to carry a daikini baby.
And at what speed?
Right?
Yeah.
It's something that they had to deal with on set. So to respect that, you might want to put it in the game. It's something you got to deal with. You can't throw a baby in a bag of holding. I can tell you that much.
Against the rules.
Well, yeah. Don't they only have so long to breathe?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to change your alignment if you do that.
I feel like, and this is kind of contrary to like or at least as far as I know, to the regular D&D style. It seems that the Nelwyns if you're playing them as a PC, they should have extra Constitution points, because I've never, like, the whole time you see Burgle cut aside, like all the Nelwyns, like, they're traveling, they're like, I don't ever see a place where they're fatigued or anything like that. They're just like Okay, let's do some walking. We're gonna do this.
That's an excellent point. I never considered.
So one thing about building a Willow character is you've got to have the flaw of like poor insight, or I mean, obviously he's lacking confidence and conviction. But I found it a lot of fun that he's he's lied to a lot, like, and I don't know if he's just lying to himself a little bit, like he believes Matt Mardigan. He gives him the baby, like, and he believes all of his lies, and uh, you got to lean into that when you're playing the character. You've got to fail on purpose. Even if you as a player are like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna two-time the party. This guy is all bad. But your character says, "Hey, I believe you. I trust everything you say. Here's my money." Like,
Well, it's funny because Willow's still pretty on the fence about it when Migosh lets Mad Mardigan out of the crow's nest or crow's cage.
Oh yeah.
Migosh is convinced. Willow, he's almost there, but he's still like maybe ready for more conversation.
Sure, he's telling him and feed it, and then like what Matt Mardigan's like, is that milk? It's for the baby.
Right.
I think Migosh just got a little bit Mardigan blinded because he really enjoyed it when he picked him up and swung him around. So he's like, wow, I like this guy. I'm gonna believe anything he says.
Yeah, man.
And then he walks into the later he goes into the tavern and he asks a stranger if they'll feed his baby. Like he's just got he doesn't have the most like there's a certain ignorance there that you've got to play into. Whether it's willful or not, is open to interpretation, but there's a more subtle flaw there than the doubt and the confidence that Willow has, which can be when you're trying to improvise at a table. Sometimes those things can be two-dimensional.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And if you lean into the stuff that's a little more nuanced, then it gets more dimensions. And if you're reacting off of other people, then you're really cooking with gas.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a Willow in a character game, the constitution and the dexterity and stuff I want to get back to later, but for the role playing of it, for the theme and the characterization, you just kind of got to watch the movie and notice a couple things, take a couple notes. Especially like you had mentioned, the movie is really good at showing instead of telling. Like it's not like some other more recent films I've seen where they tell you, "Oh, she's incredibly emotional." You let your emotions get in the way of your fighting, but the character literally has no emotion in every scene, so it doesn't work. So watch Willow, take some notes. And by the way, speaking about watching Willow and taking notes, I hope Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are watching Willow and taking notes as they go into their Dungeons and Dragons movie, because they do things in different ways because it hadn't been necessarily done before.
A big fantasy movie, you mean?
Pretty much.
Yeah, geez. We had seen big fantasy movies before this, but not really definitely nowhere near the scale of Willow. Willow, they definitely were pushing for it to be the next Star Wars. They wanted to be a big franchise, and Lucas obviously had enough material for it to continue as the story.
And even if he didn't, he would let it anyways.
Well, I just mean inferring from the fact that the 3 books that Claremont did afterwards have Lucas credits on them for the story, just like the screenplay for the movie. So, yeah, sorry, not to detract, because I am curious if you would go like wizard or sorcerer or cleric with the
Oh,
character
okay.
build. Like, what do you
Oh,
think?
yeah.
I think my first go-to pick is wizard. My second pick is rogue, and then I think third would be sorcerer. If
Oh,
you're because if you're gonna go wizard, you can lean into the magical aspect of it, and it's just gonna be power scaled to Dungeons and Dragons. You're just gonna be doing like a lot more magic than they do in the movie.
hmm,
So, um, and as far as I'm concerned, you can be optimal about it too. He's not gonna be useless in combat. He plays with fire. Willow's a fire magic sorcerer if you're gonna make a D&D character. Like a level 15 Willow is blowing shit up because at the beginning of the movie he sticks a little bit of fire through his arm trick, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all I need. That's all I need to
Yep.
justify having a fire blasting halfling in my party. So I think you can absolutely go fire sorcery with your Willow character and be just fine. And it's just a matter of what you want to lean into. But my first pick is Wizard because I think it's just more fun to the character that you've got a bag of tricks to work with. You know, in the party makeup, you're the short one who's gonna have the clutch spells,
What
and
about a mix? Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and that if you're a wizard, it can include fireball, but you've got a lot more utility than the sorcerer is gonna have. What were you gonna
Oh,
say?
I was just thinking about it, and what about a mix? Like I see the sorcerer, because that he has naturally has some magic. But what
Sure.
about a mix between sorcerer and like a druid or something that would have a nature type magic?
I think you could absolutely go druid with that and lean into the fey magic side of it. I just didn't personally.
Ah, gotcha.
you said rogue too, though. That was an
Oh
interesting pick
yeah,
for me, especially because Willow is, does have some magic, and I'm not aware of a rogue build where they have magic without
Oh yeah.
multi-classing.
Yeah, no, if at third level you can take the arcane trickster archetype and you learn
Oh,
yeah,
the mage hand cantrip, and then you learn only illusion and enchantment magic. So you can make illusions and you can like charm people. So you're a
ooh,
rogue with these only the trick spells. You don't have any fireballs or anything like that.
that
Maybe a
sounds kind of
fire,
cool though.
yeah, maybe a fire cantrip. You can pick up a couple cantrips. But yeah,
Hmm.
that one's in the player's handbook. That's in the rules as written, old school 2015 player's handbook, and that's one of my favorite characters to play. I love playing a rogue or a fighter with a little bit of magic for utility and buffing, helping control during combat. And the arcane trickster, um, their bread and butter technique is a mage hand, and I don't necessarily, it's just what you want to lean into with the Willow character, and he uses sleight of hand. You can play into
Right.
the sleight of hand and just have him do that more than I think he does in the movie. He does it at the beginning and the end, and that's really it. But throughout a campaign, if you're playing an arcane trickster, that's going to be your bread and butter for your Willow character. You're going to be doing that a lot. That's their
Nice.
shtick. I think the wizard and the arcane trickster are my go-tos, but a sorcerer or a druid, it's really it's more about the theme.
totally.
And you got to
Yeah.
play one of the short races, a halfling or a gnome, maybe
Right.
a dwarf.
I think for the extra con, you want to go dwarf for that. Like, I hadn't even thought about it. I would probably have, before tonight, probably have gone gnome or halfling as well. But
Right.
when
Yeah.
Adam, when you brought up the whole like extra constitution, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that totally makes more sense to play it as a dwarf. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
No, I was definitely leaning into the halfling. They're more hobbity for me. But a gnome has some cool magic that you can do too, so I think you could get away with either one. What's
Oh yeah.
interesting about the gnome is they're split up. They have the forest gnome and the rock gnome, and neither of them really fit perfectly. Like a rock gnome is a tinkerer. Like you get little robot contraptions, little
Right.
toys, and you can still, and forest gnomes can like talk to animals, and Willow doesn't do either of those things. So it's just a matter of which one you want to lean into. And if you want to lean into that Fey magic side, talking to animals isn't a huge stretch for Willow, I don't
Right.
think. And then if you go the rock gnome, the tinkerer gnome, I don't think it's a huge stretch, or even just to change your character. Instead of a farmer, he's a tinkerer, or you know what I mean? Like it's just this additional dimension that if you're going rules as written and playing Dungeons and Dragons, then you're just going to make a little adjustment to your character. But I think the halfling fits the best. They've got brave, and they're little. You get a constitution bonus.
That sounds fun.
The way the races work in Dungeons and Dragons now, also the bonuses, you can just put them wherever you want them nowadays. You don't have to, like, if you're playing a Dragonborn and it says +2 strength, +1 charisma, there's optional rules to just do a +2 whatever you want: wisdom, intelligence, dexterity. Your +1 to charisma, you can make it any other ability that you didn't make your +2. So they've really made it. They're trying to make it so that the racial options are less about the bonuses and more about the traits and the features that you get. And you can even mix it up now with custom lineages where you have an elf trait, but you were raised among dwarves, so you have a dwarf trait as well. Depending on your GM and whether you're doing player's handbook only, there's a lot of different ways you could go with your Willow character. And if you're picking out your classes and your races, the last one to pick out is a background. There's like hermit, folk hero. There's a lot of backgrounds to choose from, but I like. Oh, I got to put it in front of me. I like the guild artisan. So a guild artisan is supposed to be like a tradesman, and I think you could just go cook.
Ah.
Have you ever heard that old Mitch Hedberg routine? He says, I moved to Hollywood. I'm a comedian, and the first thing they asked me is if I'm a writer. And I told them I'm a comedian. They said, "Okay, do you act?" I said, "If a farmer comes in, do you ask him to cook for you? I'm a comedian." So I feel like with my Willow, it's not too much of a stretch to go from farmer to cook.
I see what you
Nice.
did there. Oh my god. Yeah, okay. I follow.
And then the other background is entertainer. If you're going to go into the lean into the bardic kind of entertainer perspective on Willow, then grab entertainer and grab bard and take some creative liberties there.
Oh, I love that. No, yeah, that makes perfect sense because he's got the whole that's his passion is doing is trying to become the High Alduin's apprentice and their whole tradition of doing the displays of magic.
Yeah, I feel like if you're playing a Willow character, you've got to pick up sleight of hand somehow, either with your class or your background. And
Absolutely.
if you do charlatan, might even be a good one. Charlatan comes with some other stuff that doesn't necessarily fit Willow, like I think a disguise kit and like a forgery kit, but it does come with the and like a false identity feature. But you do get that sleight of hand. So it just depends on what you want to lean into on that one. I liked Guild Artisan though, and it lets you pick. I think if you go that route, you might have to play like um, rogue or maybe get a custom skill somehow to get your sleight of hand. I can't remember. I'll have to look at the character sheet. But I feel
No,
like
yeah,
that
sleight of
sleight.
hand's essential, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like the sleight of hand is it's his beginning and his end to the movie. You gotta incorporate it, and it'll be nice to have it happening more in your campaign than maybe it did in the movie.
Dude, yeah, it's really funny because I wanted to go through that specifically today, in the book and try and figure out if it is supposed to be a sleight of hand or if it's actually Willow performing magic, because it's fairly clear that he's performing sleight of hand from our perspective in our reality, watching from here. But thinking about this being a fantasy world where the no ones I already knew, have inherent magic, it's totally possible that he's just performing minor spells, and it's not like taxing him super hard or something,
Right.
the way that their world's magic works or something. But it was, even reading through the adaptation or the novelization, it's unclear if he's doing sleight of hand or not. The way that it's written, it is almost I think intentionally unclear.
Oh wow.
So I
Yeah,
thought that was interesting.
You know what? That while you're thinking, that kind of reminds me of another. Are we allowed to make comparisons to other franchises and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, like it reminds me of a little bit of Quentin in the Magicians, because
Oh,
he's doing sleight of hand magic all the time, but it's just actually him. He thinks he's doing sleight of hand, but he's actually doing magic, and he doesn't realize that until he ends up going to the break bills test, and then suddenly he gets like heated and overwhelmed, and then he suddenly does this magnificent card trick with magic that he just can't say no, that's not magic, that's just sleight of hand. It confronts him and says, hey, you're actually doing magic. You know what I mean?
damn,
I
that
can
is
see
really
that.
cool. There's so
Yeah.
much
yeah,
about Magicians that I wanted to like, and the teen drama just ruined it for me, man. I hate to admit it. I'm a grumpy old man, I guess, or something,
I
because
tell you what, I love the show, but read the book if you want something a little bit more satisfying in that respect. I would read the books.
that's awesome. I will do
Yeah.
that because, yeah, I genuinely wanted to like that show. It did a lot of things that I was really excited about as like someone who loves fantasy, but was disappointed about how much they leaned into the relationship dramas of these
Right,
people
right.
who just aren't even like unfit for each other. They just are incapable of communicating like human people because it's written that way. It's frustrating. Anyway, that's
Yes.
my gripe about the Magicians, but I do like that element of like it's maybe doesn't have to be one or the other, could be both.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, because I mean I do think Willow is super influential as far as like other fantasy that came after it. I mean, of course, in the whole morphing technique, but
Right, right.
in a lot of those odd technical aspects that they really nailed out when we were still mostly doing physical effects with very little computer touches here and there for the wow factor.
Right.
Um,
The
you know,
stop action.
dude, I mean, some of that stuff just looks so crispy even now. Like I love physical effects, so it's probably part of it, just like me giving leeway a lot of the time. But I mean, honestly, when you watch like a lot of stuff that's modern that utilizes physical effects, they're not changing a lot of the techniques that they were doing in the 80s and 90s,
Right, yeah.
Like, I mean, RoboCop still has the best physical effects I've ever seen in a movie. Let's just be real. It peaked then.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
right at the transition. The
Yeah,
movie was
man.
the movie was being filmed as the movie industry was transitioning.
Right. So you get those same kind of really wonderful physical effects treatments with Willow, where they had spent decades figuring out how to do, mats and um, kind of like superimpose those big creatures that they shot tiny into this larger, into the rest of the film and all that.
Right.
Like yeah, it's just it of course I think shows itself a little bit in like Lucas's or not Lucas's Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you know, Willow had to walk so that Lord of the Rings could fly, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe that.
definitely.
And honestly, like there is a lot of I think of course there's a lot of really popular fantasy films that came kind of just before Willow, Conan the Barbarian and things like that. But um, yeah, Willow was one of the I mean, honestly, thinking back and looking back at a lot of the movies that were in the fantasy genre from that era, Willow has so much more heart than any of them. So many of them are almost more similar to what we get as fantasy nowadays. These very grim kind of somber adventures where people are backstabbing each other constantly. And Willow is this kind of bright light, man, that is just like this humble everyman father who just wants this baby to be safe. It's such a
Yeah, how
wholesome
many
thing, man.
not enough of our fantasy media of today has their hero dressed up as a woman,
Hey, yeah.
Right.
Like Mad Mardigan does. Like there's a lot of charm to it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it representation necessarily, but I have to tell you, as a child, seeing Val Kilmer dressed up as a woman, it definitely did something to me.
Like
uh,
when Bugs Bunny dresses up like a girl bunny.
Oh, I think when yeah, right. I think when Val Kilmer has the scene with the Sorsha character where has the love potion. I think that does something to all of us. It's perfectly okay.
I mean,
The way he talks to her is just like crazy.
Yeah.
It's great.
it's one of the strongest performances we've ever seen out of Val Kilmer for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, let's just be real. I mean, yeah. I mean, I
It's
honestly think that that Val Kilmer saw a huge opportunity in what Willow had to offer him, and the rest of the cast, I mean, just what it had to offer as a film, and
Yeah.
really dove into that role like it was the opportunity that I think it was. Most people I would hope would see that movie and go, yeah, what a hell of an opportunity it would have been for 20-something-year-old Val Kilmer to jump into this role of an epic swashbuckler that those kinds of movies aren't even really being made anymore.
Well, I'm glad Willow gets time with Kaya and carries the braid too. Like I'm glad he gets to have those movie moments.
Right.
It's so beautiful. I
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
so sweet. I love
Um,
their dynamic.
Oh yeah.
yeah, man, she's she's the heart and he's the responsibility. You know, in the book, it's a lot more clear that Kaya and Willow are even more of like a solid unit. A great
Mhm.
A
team that
team.
works together to
Yeah.
fill in each other's gaps.
Right.
It's a interesting dynamic, um, and yeah, I love the idea that that's like I love hair. I have always had long hair, and cutting it off always feels like this big thing. So having Kaya cut her hair to give her husband a lock of it so that he can take a part of her with him on his adventure is the sweetest thing.
That's huge. Yeah.
It, I'll say when you're a kid, especially, a haircut is a huge deal. Getting your hair like there's a Who song
Yeah.
about it. There's
A lot more
there's
than just the
definitely
Who, yeah.
yeah, but I mean that for me anyone,
Totally.
that's the one that comes to my mind anyways. So there's definitely a lot to be said there. So
Absolutely.
it's definitely got gravity to it when she cuts the braid and gives it to him.
Oh yeah.
Love that part.
That's like, all the moments Willow is, showing his compassion, showing his heart, like, uh, I think that, he's like almost like squeezing that lock of hair in his pocket or something while he's saying it. He's having those moments. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's a wonderful thing. Courage, Willow. Like I can just imagine him sitting there next to Finn Rizal at the gates of Bab Morta's castle, just like, oh my God, courage, Willow, squeezing that thing with all the power his hands have in them. Cool, yeah. I really like the idea of Willow as a character in the D&D game, because I think that playing Willow is something that, I mean, obviously Warwick really enjoyed. I mean, obviously huge opportunity for him. Someone that definitely deserves it. I mean, his performance as Willow is really captivating. We talked about how all of the characters around him earlier, we talked about they're so large. The characters, Finn and Frangine and Rule, Mad Mardigan, these are huge characters brought to life by some very, very talented actors. Where Willow is a more like subdued character. We mentioned, his very humble kind of nature, his kind of propensity to be kind of a father figure to just about anybody and want what's best for everyone, not necessarily a terribly selfish character. So it's interesting to play that as an actor, to kind of have this character who can, in this fantasy world, almost just play very honest, very natural, and not necessarily have to go over the top to deliver this huge character that Willow is surrounded by. It's that kind of subtle comedy, that you get it a lot of times in like sitcoms. You see that same kind of chemistry with these large, silly ensemble cast of goofy characters with, the typical straight man, typically also a dad. God, that's funny. Would Willow be funny as a sitcom?
It's Willow. He's got his wife and kids.
Oh
It's
man,
gonna
I
be
would
like
watch.
a Family Ties style theme song, maybe.
I mean,
Oh man,
I imagined it when you said it. I imagined it in my head, like following the movie, like it had been this huge success, and executives got sold on a TV show.
man, that would have been really interesting. Like almost like how they did a lot of really weird kind of almost avant-garde sitcoms in that same era, like more like early '90s, but like dinosaurs. What a weird fucking
Oh
concept!
yeah,
What a weird concept!
Yeah.
What a weird concept for a sitcom.
right.
But at the same time, uh, it had all of the trappings of a typical sitcom, while also kind of devoting itself to this humanoid dinosaur people world. Where almost like um, callbacks to Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble kind of stuff, but in
Right.
its own way, in a really smart way. That show is brilliant, and it would have been interesting to see Willow kind of tackled in a similar way.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is Willow's a strong archetype, so it's gonna fit in any kind of media, cinematic language, whatever take you put on that. As long as he's not the biggest person in the room, you're gonna have fun with it. Because then, when you do have the spotlight, when you do have those moments, they're more significant. They're
Right.
not
Oh
just
man,
like fodder, fan service. When you speak or cast your clutch spell, like the whole table's just gonna react,
totally, totally,
Oh yeah.
and
and
that's a lot of fun to play.
yeah, man, and um, it's interesting because like I don't know, man. I guess there's also precedent set for fantasy series that did a comedic take on fantasy from that era as well. Look at the Legend of Zelda franchise cartoon. I mean, it's not good. I wouldn't go that far, but it does have what I could see as being a similar kind of, like, if they had done Willow as like a, a series or something like that, for kids probably, because even Toxic Avenger had a cartoon show for kids, and that's not
Toxic.
kid material. The Toxic Crusaders. Do you remember that show?
No, not at all. I was just saying that's toxic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't uncommon. We had Ace Ventura cartoon shows. Ace Ventura is
sure.
not a kids movie, but they made that do a kids show.
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely, there's a lot of precedent for Willow. If it had, that's the thing, because I always thought it just didn't do well, but it wasn't a financial failure.
No,
No.
By
not
and
by any.
large, what kind of prevented it being taken up was more the critical response, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, they expected it to sell like Star Wars, and it didn't sell like Star Wars. It just sold good. Like it didn't. They it did well, but they were expecting like greatness. They thought it was going to be the next Star Wars. So it didn't fail by any means, but it didn't meet their expectations as far as
Yeah.
financially goes.
Well, I know also it wasn't necessarily very well received critically. A lot of the bigger critics of the time, Siskel and Ebert specifically, gave it 2 thumbs down. And that was
really?
kind of it seemed by and large the more critical consensus was that this was, trash. It was bubblegum. It was, everything I can't see in this movie is what they accuse it of being. And it's really silly to me. Because, I mean, I can't remember, because I hated it, what Siskel and Ebert had to say specifically about it, but yeah, it seemed like no one really gave it the attention, or it didn't feel like it was analyzed fairly from a critical standpoint. Because I'm a pretty critical person, and granted, there's a lot of nostalgia factor going on when I watch and rewatch for the millionth time Willow.
Well, I don't. I'll
up?
butt in. I don't have any of the nostalgia, and it's better every time I watch it. I feel like it's a movie that's not really amazing the first time you see it. It takes a minute for it to sink, at least for me, anyways, because it's really about the characters, and it kind of, I don't know, it might miss it might you might miss it the first time you see it, and I feel like for a lot of people that's probably what happened, because the second, third, and the more times I watched it, the more I appreciated it, actually enjoyed it too.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if it's the plot or the pacing, or I don't think I can put my finger on it, but there's definitely something where I kind of missed it the first time I saw it.
Hmm.
But once you spend time with the characters and see the character choices that actors and writers are making, and at least for me anyways, that's where a lot of the appreciation comes for it. Like, you spend the majority of the movie with Willow and Mad Mardigan, and the plot almost doesn't matter if you're having fun with those two characters the whole time. But as an audience member, you want to be sold on a plot too, and sometimes it gets. I think there's so many like freaking names to keep track of. The first time you watch it, it may not all sink in, and you don't. Some movies you don't have to know all the plot and still have fun, and I'm not always that way. Like, I like to know everything that's going on. So there's a lot to it there, and certainly for my viewing of it, once I could grok all the names, it was a lot more fun.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on there. I think that's one of the yeah, that's one of the frustrating things for me is that um,
There's a
it's
lot of world building.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of world building, a lot of characters, and everything's done fairly subtly. There's not a lot of direct exposition, and what is
Yeah,
there is done with a certain gravitas or a certain flair for the dramatic that a character like Bavmorda can get away with just saying some exposition because it makes sense for someone that you know dyed in the wool evil kind of evil with a capital E kind of
yeah,
character to
yeah.
do.
And if you're not paying attention to everything she says, the whole Sorsha plot line will get lost on you if you don't hear that first line about a prophecy and her daughter betraying her. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
it's just one line right there, and they
Right.
40 minutes later into the movie when Sorsha shows up, they expect you to be tracking all of that.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I usually need it hit over the head a little bit harder for me to get some of the things that are going on in this movie. So I
Yeah.
definitely enjoyed it more after multiple watches, and
Absolutely.
that
Uh,
probably speaks to some of it. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say I got the review, and yeah, it's like I don't know if they were just in a hurry that day or what their thing was, but here's the review. It's Willow is a fearsomely ambitious movie, but it is
Okay.
not fearsome, and it is not wondrous, and it is about a journey too far down a road too well traveled by other movies. It's a fantasy about the
What?
quest of a lovable little person and his heroic newfound friend to return a lost baby to where she belongs, uh, and outsmart a wicked queen and kill a two-headed dragon in the process. In other words, standard stuff. Roger Ebert. Man,
Wow.
that's rough.
It's okay. So this is absurd. It's
Yeah,
not
angry
fearsome.
old man.
Right.
It's not fearsome. That movie is like, okay, you put that against any action movie. Action movie. Let's not even go fantasy. Let's not go sci-fi because those movies.
Right, right.
If you put it up against a Marvel movie today, you get a more realistic sense for violence within Willow than any Marvel mainline title that I have ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, you got
guarantee.
these
I mean,
death dogs coming up and chewing up old women, and right away, you know.
as a child, even today, the effects they use to turn the soldiers into pigs during that big scene, and the way
That
that Jean Marsh delivers that line, that moment, she is so powerful in that moment that like that scene is striking. That scene
Yeah,
is
yeah.
fearsome. It's rude. It is absurd to call it not fearsome and not wondrous. It's such a deep world that was built there. It's such a great foundation that could have gone so much further.
Oh yeah.
Um, like
yeah,
the whole Cherylindria and the Brownies and their whole like forest community of probably a much deeper. I can imagine because of what we're kind of accustomed to fantasy wise that there's probably many more creatures that live in that woods.
Oh
The
yeah.
Nelwans probably have their own kind of like much deeper thing that we can go into and discuss as far as like we've already talked about the community and the High Aldwin and the all of that. But yeah, the way that the Daikini crossroads and how everything's separated, even that tavern has so much wonder to it.
Hmm.
It is just it's ridiculous to I don't know. I never really took Roger Ebert too seriously as a critic until I got especially as a kid because he always seemed to hate the movies that I loved the most.
Right.
But dude, I feel like critics were really important then. Like I used to read the paper as a
oh
kid
yeah.
specifically for comics and movie critique. Like that was why I read the newspaper.
John Lovett's got a show called The Critic.
Right.
Exactly. It was a huge part of the industry that is still there, but it's mostly online and
Yeah.
honestly the only
But,
one most people pay attention to is Rotten Tomatoes.
yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was just a crazy expectation for the film at the time. I think, they were following Cocoon, following Star Wars, just
Right?
all
Val
these.
Kilmer was fairly fresh out of Top Gun. It was like 2 years before that.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
So I think there was just crazy expectation, and it's not a movie that I think anyone can expect. Not, I don't know. They claim it's generic, but I find it to be incredibly unorthodox.
Oh yeah.
Not maybe not incredibly so, but certainly that's part of the charm for me in it.
Yeah, so I think the critical response is ultimately it's interesting because it tends to be the professionals at the time especially didn't necessarily review it super well, but you can tell it's got such a deep love from like the kind of cult following it's established since then that of course they're going to make a net or a Disney Plus series out of it. I mean, do you guys know the origin of how this all happened? And maybe I've got this a little bit fuzzy here because I think I saw it in like the special features for Solo or something like that.
Oh really?
But the origins of this movie were, I think, it was one of the assistant directors or writers, I believe, that was working on Solo, that while Ron Howard was on set and was able to, and like at one point was interacting with Ron Howard, having a conversation, and brought up the fact that they were obsessed with Willow, and they've had this desperate want for more Willow since their early childhood, and like that's by and large how it ended up getting picked back up was Ron Howard, I guess, probably realized that there was a cult following for the film. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
And it's the right time too, market wise to do it.
Yeah, man. Fantasy's definitely made a huge comeback over the last decade. Game of Thrones having a huge part in that, but
Yep.
a lot of other smaller.
Years later, everybody's trying to do their Game of Thrones still.
Totally.
Everybody's chasing that hockey puck still.
Yep.
Because everyone's like, well, they definitely messed up the ending there, so we could probably at least get that better. As long as Netflix doesn't cancel us after season 3.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and honestly, I hate to say it because of how I feel about how of just monopolies in general, but I think Disney Plus is probably the best home for it. A lot of their original series they don't put no money into. They have good production value, and they tend to put a lot into those their original series and stuff like that. So there's a lot of potential for Willow to be like the new Willow to be not just a flash in the pan, like the original was, potentially explore more of this big world that, one of the greatest storytellers of our time, was one of the stories they've kept in their back pocket. Lucas had in his back pocket as early as like, A New Hope.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, it's great to see it get another chance, and that its producers and the place making it have a fairly decent track record for making content. So, hopes are high, but maybe that's unwise. Always try and hedge your bets with stuff like this, I guess, is usually the common wisdom.
Yeah, I tend to be pretty easy on that. I give everything a chance, at least a couple times, and then then I might make an odd decision, or an odd opinion. But yeah, I have hope for it. I think it's going to be good. And like I forget who said it, but I think waiting until now being the time, not just with the fact that there's more fantasy and people are chasing that, but also, I mean, Warwick Davis is now old enough to play a more wizened sort of authority on magic or something.
Yeah, I like seeing him on film, and that's my favorite character that Warwick's done. So I'm just
Yeah.
stoked to see it.
Although I think, have you guys seen the I forget if it's on. I forget where it was. Oh, I think it was actually on Disney Plus. There's like a little preview sort of thing where Warwick walks around and talks to the cast.
They just roast him, man.
Oh yeah,
It's
and
just
he's
a
just like
roast for Warwick by a bunch of teenagers.
right,
Yeah,
and he's up for it too. He's just like, all right, I'm gonna walk around and just pretend that I'm super important. And
Pretty good.
I think it'd be good. I don't know, like I think it might be fun if his character was like this. He becomes somehow, gets wrapped up in everything and becomes maybe not self-important. His intentions are still good, but like he thinks he's better than he is, and he's got this confidence thing going on. You hit your peaks and your valleys and stuff like that, and we find him in a valley, and this is his struggle to get, to really know himself.
I do like the idea of leaning into Warwick Davis's natural tendencies. What's the? Oh,
I think it's interesting though that like he's gotten to play so many iconic roles. Like you look at his filmography, and every role is just like it's it's great selection, and he's obviously at a point in his career where he doesn't have to take jobs he doesn't want to take anymore. Like I think
Right.
and when he was at that point, he was still making great choices. Like, I don't care what anybody says. The Leprechaun movies are fire, every last one of them. They're incredible. And Warwick makes those movies, man. I mean, he is the star of those movies, without a doubt. I mean, Jennifer Aniston got outshined by Warwick Davis in the first Leprechaun, and I will argue anyone who says otherwise.
I love An Idiot Abroad.
Oh, man.
I still have not watched that. That's on my list of things.
So I just when you mentioned the peaks and valleys of Willow and
Right.
portraying this more flawed side of him, I immediately thought of An Idiot Abroad. There's so many moments in that where he's like yelling or annoyed and like it's just I just love it. So I hope they take a page from An Idiot Abroad on the new Willow. I'm so into that.
That would be cool.
Well, I suppose we will eventually run out of time here, guys. Are there any character moments from the movie that that we could spend a little time talking about? I know for myself, I think I already spoke on my favorite character moments for Willow, and they're at the beginning of the movie when he has the opportunity to not be a hero, to go back to the village, and he's always questioning, and when he questions me, gosh, whether that's whether they did the right thing. That's my favorite character moment for him is when they question that, and it's almost a little bit the moment's kind of robbed by the bird showing up with
With
the
the baby.
brownies and the baby, because I almost want him to just turn around at that point and to check. I guess it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and he couldn't, know where Mad Mardigan went. But I just love that character moment where he can't necessarily. They're talking about, oh, we'll be welcomed back as heroes.
Yeah.
and hearing himself say it, you can see it in his freaking eyes, man. He's hearing his own voice and he doesn't believe it, and he's questioning it, and that's definitely my favorite character moment for Willow. And I hope I get to have a moment like that in a campaign, right? Especially right at the beginning, where you can really answer the call, and when you cross the threshold, it's really going to matter that much more.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have any character moments for Willow, or anything to add to that moment?
Dude.
There's so many good ones, but I was just thinking about the that moment in every reluctant hero's life where they're about to do the thing that they're supposed to do, and they're going to do it really well, and they do it, but then it turns around and and you find out, oh crap, this is just the beginning. And like that moment where they're in the top of the castle, and he throws the acorn at Beth Morda, and she catches it and starts turning to stone, and they're like, you could even even when I'm watching it and I know what's going to happen, I'm like, yes, he's defeated her. And then you're like, oh God, bless America. What the hell? And then and he realizes, oh my God, I thought I knew what I was doing. Now I've got so much to go, so far to go.
Yeah, and I want to comment on both of these moments because they're such great moments, and I could just talk forever about this character. We're gonna have to do another episode on Willow or something, because it's like there's so much in my notes that I didn't get to. It's like, oh my God. Picking a moment.
I'll make it worse for you, Weston.
Picking a moment is tough.
I'll pick another one for you. I like right before that when they're climbing up the stairs to the altercation with Bev Morda and Raziel. What's Razel?
Razel, yeah.
She says, you don't have to go up here. I've got it from here. She almost she wants to leave him behind or something.
Right.
And as I recall, he doesn't let that happen. He ends up climbing the stairs, and then he's watching the altercation, and then it falls on him to save the day.
To pick up that mantle.
And I love that moment on the stairs where she even Rozelle's like, no, Peck, stay over here.
It's her "you've done enough" moment. Like, you've done enough here, Willow. Like, you've gotten us this far. It's our responsibility to take it the rest of the way to the 100-yard line, end zone, whatever you call the footballs. But I don't know, the moment that I use, I don't know, because this movie means a lot to me. And there are moments from it that I quote or think about from time to time situationally. And the one that I always, the one I use often is that moment. I brought it up earlier where they're standing outside in front of that huge, Bev Morda's huge castle, and they're waiting for the soldiers to approach them and get to the right distance so they can have their backup. And Willow just has to stand there and be brave. And he's saying to himself, "Courage, Willow." And I just that's my favorite. That's probably my favorite moment for Willow, is that steadfastness and knowing that there's so much writing on this that is beyond him. Knowing that his saving Elora Danan, him being there to be there for that infant, is not just important because of her role in this prophecy or anything like that, but because of his role as a father. He won't be able to look his children in the eye. He won't be able to look his wife in the eye. He won't be
Right.
able to ever look at himself the same. If anything should happen to Elora Danon, and in that moment, he's put himself through literal hell. There's so much that is telling him to quit there. And what makes Willow a hero is courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it's a hero who kind of has to talk. He has to give himself a pep talk, dude.
Right.
Yeah, man.
I love
We all
it.
need a pep talk.
Self-talk,
Yeah.
pep talk. Yeah.
He's not just like courageous. He's afraid, and what makes you courageous is acting in spite of that.
Yep.
Precisely. Well, yeah, like I was saying, we might end up having to do a part 2 talking about Willow, because just talking about this movie, having a conversation with you guys has been really nice, and we've definitely gotten into the weeds a couple of times and away from the star, but I think that's good. I think that's how conversations go, but it definitely means that there's more room to discuss this legend.
Yeah, I think
This
I
myth.
talked about the character in light of the first half of the movie more than the second half, so maybe there's some more
yeah.
there. As far as the playing Willow in a game, if you're going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and D&D Beyond's the great tool that I like to use to create a character sheet quickly, and
Love D&D Beyond.
yeah, so I'll we'll have some links to these. You guys should have these up or be able to bring them up. But to get your right optimal pluses and minuses and play your Willow character and be able to help the party in combat and provide something a little bit different, most likely when it comes to the role play, since everyone's going to be playing their cool Vox Machina characters. But I think if you're going to be building Willow, your dump stat, so to speak, is probably going to be your strength. You're going to have, if you're doing standard array, that's where you're going to put your 8. If you're rolling, that's where you're going to put your lowest ability. Willow definitely needs a Mad Mardigan to survive if you're going to be playing D&D. You're going to need a fighter next to you to help keep you alive, because you're dumping your strength and your constitution with this character build. You got to have some dexterity so that you can get your sleight of hand in there. So lowest you're going to do is maybe a +1 if you're playing the wizard, but if you're going for the rogue, arcane trickster, or even maybe the bard, you're gonna want a 14 or a 16 in there to get a +2 or a +3, and then your constitution, maybe a 10. That's what I'm gonna see if I can get away with. Well, depending on your campaign, your Willow character may end up being a martyr. He's definitely got a glass cannon kind of build, but once you get to your intelligence, your wisdom, and even your charisma, you're going to want a 13 or higher. If you're playing the wizard, you got to put a 15 or a 14 in there. And if you play the gnome, player's handbook wise, you're going to get the intelligence you need for that wizard. But if you're playing with the modern rules or more lenient GM, you can move those pluses and minuses as you need. But definitely want your intelligence, wisdom, charisma to be your next highest stats. I think it's you have the choice, put a 13 in charisma. Maybe if you're playing a high enough level campaign, you can get a level or 2 of bard. Or if you're playing that sorcerer, you can play the bard sorcerer, do a nice little multi-class there. And when it comes to the skill loadout, stay away from insight, because I don't think that Willow's a good read of like people and
Right.
knowing when he's being lied to necessarily. I don't know. Maybe that's my interpretation. But he is good at playing the leader and persuading people. You got to get that persuasion and that sleight of hand
Right, right.
checked off. I don't think he's necessarily knowledgeable. I wouldn't be putting anything in history or nature or anything like that.
He's
I
a
think
farmer.
yeah, but
He's a farmer,
maybe
yeah.
nature. Okay, you could go nature, but not like survival, not religion.
That's fair.
For my outlook. And I was looking at the guild artisan background. It has the feature that you're in a guild membership, and at the very end of it, it says you must pay dues of 5 gold pieces per month to the guild. If you miss payments, you must make up back dues to remain in the guild's good graces. So just because you're a guild artisan or merchant doesn't mean that you're like some wealthy noble type. Like you could play this character where it's more accurate to the movie. You owe
Right.
money. The guild membership. You can take some creative liberties with that, and even get your melodramatic hook inserted that way. And if you do pick that background, it also gives some decent generic loadouts for the build. The personality traits that it offers, some of them include I'm rude to people who lack my commitment to hard work and fair play. Willow is rude
Oh,
to Mad
yeah.
Mardigan. He does not
Absolutely.
respect him. So that's definitely an accurate one that you can just pick and grab. You just click on it and it's on your sheet. Ideals, there were 2 different ones that came up that fit him. People, he's committed to the people he cares about, not to ideals. And freedom, everyone should be free to pursue his or her own livelihood. So you're playing a chaotic good or neutral good character with this. Um, you don't have to adhere to he doesn't necessarily adhere to laws for the sake of law.
Right.
I think there's plenty of rules and laws that a Willow character would jump at the opportunity to change or have people take a second look at least. Um, some of the bonds that load out with that background. One day I will return to my guild and prove that I am the greatest artisan of them all. He wants to be in
Yep.
this case, it's not
Yep.
the artisan, he wants to be the greatest sorcerer of them
Uh-huh.
all. So, just one little noun change on that and you're good to go. And then flaws, I actually didn't find any that fit, but you can just type in or write in on your sheet, the confidence, doubt, um, um, not necessarily being a good read of people or maybe being too trusting, et cetera, et cetera. Whichever flaws you want to lean into.
Mhm.
And then the other option was that I was leaning into was or at least wanted to try was the charlatan, and that one comes with the false identity, and that one may not be as good a fit. I didn't have as much time or thought with that one. Some
Mm.
of the generic options that it offers, an ideal is friendship. Material goods come and go, but bonds of friendship last forever.
Mm.
Um, Willow's certainly not greedy. He's just trying to provide.
Right.
And one of the flaws that it offered up was I'm convinced that no one could ever fool me the way I fool others. And I think that that's not necessarily a flaw that we see Willow lean into a lot, but I think it is present.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Um,
some good options straight from the player's handbook.
I'm trying to come up with this real quick, but it's interesting that charlatan is one of them especially because of the second ident or the false identity thing. Um, sorry, mainly because Willow in the sequel series takes on another identity. It's like Thorn something, Thorn Darkfoot. I'm looking it up. Because it was just
Ah.
so. Uh, yeah, it makes sense. Like maybe even for the older version of Willow is ultimately my point.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah, a higher level type, further in his career type Willow. And then the other background, I didn't build a sheet for it, but entertainer. It didn't have, I think, can't recall. I'll have to double check. It may not have had the sleight of hand though. It had performance and persuasion. I think might be sleight of hand. Oh, performance and acrobatics. That's what it is. And I really wanted that sleight of hand, so that's why I chose those loadouts. But either way, you're going to go into those intelligence stats: intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Get yourself some dexterity, and then find yourself a nice Mad Mardigan to fill out where your weakness is.
Thorn Drumheller. That was the name.
Drumheller.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He takes on actually. Just went to the wiki. Sorsha bestows him with that name, and then the novel essentially progresses 11 years with him going by that name.
Nice.
Very
so yeah,
cool.
I think it's interesting with the charlatan, false identity, and all that stuff. It might make more sense for for an older version of the character. So it was just good instincts on your part, my dude.
I'm a good guesser. Well, guys, you want to wrap things up? Anything we didn't get time to say for now, or I mean, I think that's it for Willow.
Yeah, did you mention checking out the character sheets on Nerdcrafty?
Yeah, we're going to put the links up to those on nerdcrafty.com so that you can take a look. If you have any questions for us, we of course have open ears and open mouths, so we would like to hear from you. And you can do that by I'm so sorry. I need a quick reminder on the email that we made for this. I believe it's going to be ignore the bird at nerdcrafty.com. There we go.
Yep.
Ignore the bird at nerdcrafty.com, and we'll take a read and spend some time. In the meantime, we do plan on returning at least to talk about Mad Mardigan and some of the other plethora of characters that we have in this great movie and upcoming show.
Yeah, it's an ensemble that's not necessarily really an ensemble, but yeah, plenty of characters that you can dive. I mean, especially I know I can dive into for at least 20 minutes or more.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll do a deep dive of Burblecut.
And
don't get me started.
And I promise, however long we talk about them, I will never remember or pronounce all the names correctly.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess in the name of wrapping up, I'm Weston Lee Ball. Again, you can find my stuff at Instagram and TikTok under the handle lava_submersible, and you can find some of my art at Nerdcrafty. And I am available for commissions, for acting gigs, for voice acting gigs. You need some music? What you got? I can help you out. Artist of many trades.
Yeah, thank you, Weston and Adam, for being here and talking it up and making the time. Thank you, everyone who's listening, for your earballs. And yeah, we'll be back at it.
Awesome.
Yeah, everybody have a really great evening. Let's wrap it up.
Will do.
Let's mingle.
All right, I'll be the only one to shout myself out at the end there, but sounds good.
Well, you know what? Yeah, you can find I'm Adam, and you can find me on Nerdcrafty various channels. We've got the Happy Throng, we've got Forged Friendships, we have a few other things going on, and I don't do any acting or anything like that now, but I'd love to get into voice acting. So contact me if you want me in your thing.
Yeah, and if I didn't mention it, I have some art and commission options on nerdcrafty.com as well, and I really look forward to running games for anyone and everyone.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back to talk more about Willow, Mad Mardigan, and all of our friends soon.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
This has been a Nerdcrafty podcast.